90 minutes. 90 minutes. One man sitting in a snow seat he'd dug with his own hands. No anchor, nothing fixed to the mountain except his own body pressed into the slope, holding another man's life on a rope. The wind wouldn't stop. 30 below zero. And the rope in his hands was pulling centimeter by centimeter toward the edge. He didn't know if the man below was alive or dead. He didn't know if what was underneath him was rock, snow, or nothing at all. He knew exactly one thing. If he didn't act in the next few minutes, they were both going over. Then he pulled out his knife. That was 1,985 on Ciula Grande, Peru, 6,344 meters. And the man holding the knife was named Simon Yates. 40 years later, the mountaineering world still can't agree on what he did. Before the knife, there were two young men. Joe Simpson, 25. Simon Yates, 21. Not famous, not sponsored, nobody knew their names. They had one ambition: climb the west face of Ciula Grande, a wall nobody had ever summited, because everyone who'd tried before had either turned back or never came back at all. Not because it was less dangerous than other mountains, because it was more dangerous. And that was exactly the point. On June 8th, they stood on the summit. No phone signal, no radio. Nobody below had any idea they'd just done something no one in history had done. Just wind, snow, and the feeling of having touched something rare. But climbing a mountain no one had ever summited was only half the equation. The other half, the half that kills people, was getting down. The descent route turned out far harder than expected. Yates fell through a snow cornice and dropped down the face they'd just climbed. The rope held him, one brush with death. Not the last one. Right after, Joe slipped off an ice cliff. His right leg slammed into the slope, his knee shattered. The femur driven straight down through the joint. Picture it for a second. 6,000 meters up, in a blizzard, no rescue helicopter, no medical team, no shortcut down the mountain. What does a broken leg actually mean up there? It means death. Almost certainly. Simon Yates stood over his partner in the snow with one very simple choice in front of him: leave alone or stay with a man who was already, functionally, a corpse walking. He stayed. He improvised a system on the spot, tied their two ropes into one 90-meter length, dug a seat into the snow to brace himself, and lowered Joe down in stages, climbing down to meet him, digging a new seat, lowering again. In total darkness, in a storm, unable to see each other, talking only through the tension of the rope. Every time Joe hit the snow, agony tore through his whole body. Every time Simon pulled the rope, his muscles had to take the full weight of a man dangling below him. But it was working. They'd descended almost 900 meters. One, maybe two more stages to the relative safety of the glacier. And right when everything seemed like it might actually be okay, Joe went over the edge of an ice cliff. Simon couldn't see in the dark. There was no snow under Joe's feet anymore. Just air. He was hanging between the cliff face and the darkness below, his full weight on the rope, both hands too frostbitten to feel, his right leg useless, any shout he made swallowed whole by the wind. And 45 meters above him, Simon felt his own body starting to slide toward the edge. The seat was collapsing. Nothing held him in place except his own weight pressed against the slope. If you were Simon right then, not knowing if the man below you is alive, not knowing if what's under him is rock or a bottomless drop, only knowing you're being dragged toward your own death, what do? He held on. 1 minute, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, 90 minutes. If your chest is tight right now, this is exactly why this channel exists. The moments where an ordinary person has to make a decision no one should ever have to make, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Because the next part of this story is even more insane than what you've just heard. Simon pulled out his knife. In mountaineering, cutting the rope that connects you to your partner is the absolute last taboo. It doesn't need a rule book because everyone already understands the rope isn't just rope. It's the commitment two people make the moment they decide to climb together. Cutting it means abandoning the other person. Simon cut the rope. Joe fell more than 60 meters straight down into the dark. Simon spent the rest of that night alone in the storm, not knowing whether he'd just killed his friend or just saved his own life. In the morning, he made it down to the crevasse's opening, called Joe's name over and over. Nothing came back. He concluded Joe was dead. He walked back to base camp and started digging a grave. But Joe Simpson wasn't dead. He'd fallen more than 60 meters, hit the wall of the crevasse, and by a probability close to zero landed on a narrow snow ledge inside it. Instead of the true bottom, which sat much deeper still, he woke up in total darkness, alone, rope severed, right leg destroyed. Looking up, the opening was more than 20 meters above him, impossible to climb with a shattered leg and frostbitten hands. Looking down, only darkness, no visible bottom. So he went down, deeper into the crevasse, with no idea if there was a way out, knowing only that going up was the one option that was definitely impossible. And deep inside, he found a crack of light, where the crevasse opened onto the surface of the glacier. A way out nobody could have predicted. For the next 3 days, Joe Simpson crawled and hopped 8 kilometers across broken glacier and moraine. Almost no water, no food, his right leg completely unusable, his mind slipping in and out of delirium where a Boney M song kept looping in his head over and over. Impossible to shut off. He broke the journey into small targets, reached that rock, then the next one. He reached base camp just hours before Simon and the porter were about to leave for good. Simon Yates had just finished digging his friend's grave. Here's the part no other survival story has. When the news reached Britain, the mountaineering community's first reaction wasn't amazement that Joe had survived. It was fury at Simon. Someone attacked him physically in the French Alps. The Alpine Club, the most prestigious mountaineering institution in Britain, discussed expelling him for good. Simon Yates became a name attached to one act, the man who cut the rope and left his partner to die on the mountain. And the one person who stood up to defend him, first and loudest, was Joe Simpson. The man the rope had been cut on. Joe wrote Touching the Void, not to tell the story of his own miraculous survival. He wrote it to put on the record, in detail, the 90 minutes Simon had held that rope, alone, in a storm, with no idea if the man below was alive before he cut it. And Joe's answer, from the only person on earth with any standing to give one. If I had been in Simon's position, I would have cut the rope too. There's no hero in this story, no villain, just two people standing on a mountain that was trying to kill both of them, forced to decide in seconds with incomplete information, and then having to live with it for the rest of their lives. Simon Yates still climbs to this day. Joe Simpson became a best-selling author and speaker known around the world. Their book sold more than 1 million copies, was translated into over 20 languages, and became an award-winning documentary. But the question Simon had to answer in those 90 minutes on that cliff, in that storm, the question no book or training could ever prepare you for, still has no right answer. The man whose rope was cut became the man who defended the one who cut it. If that doesn't make you rethink where the line between right and wrong actually sits, nothing will.